Everybody, at the moment that they were born, has a signature of four animals. I actually draft five. That's what's called a life house, which is unique to them. And from those things, with a little bit of homework and perception, you can tell an awful lot about somebody. And the reason that horoscope really doesn't do the Bazi justice is because it's not about tall, dark strangers. It's really a healing tool because it will tend to identify things that people haven't seen that they can actually do something about.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. Today we journey across the pond to London, England, to speak with Richard Ashworth about his many years of study of the Bazi, or Four Pillars of Destiny. It is mistakenly known as the Chinese Horoscope, but it is much more than that. It really delves very deeply into Chinese philosophy, and it is really a healing tool. Richard was kind enough to ask me ahead of time for my date and time of birth, and he did my Bazi, and that's what we're going to be talking about at the beginning of this interview, and how this applies to my life, past and present. And it was a real eye-opener, very inspiring and personal experience. There was a lot of very accurate and pointed insights into myself, which I absolutely loved. And then we move on to talking about how we can apply this to spirituality, family of origin, trauma, in our relationships to society, religion, and politics. And of course, much of this information can be found in Richard's new book, I Talk to the Animals. So let's jump in. This is Richard Ashworth. Here I am with Richard Ashworth, just outside of London. I'm not outside of London. Well, I'm way outside of London because I'm in Los Angeles. But we're talking across the pond, as they say. And Richard, well, you'll have already heard the intro. So let's start, Richard. You did a little work based on my birthday.
Yes.
We were talking a little bit before, and some of the things you said to me were so accurate. It kind of, like, that's what you started with in the conversation. You started telling me stuff about myself that was right on point. So let's talk, and it's called Bazi. And why don't we explain that and then get into some of the specifics about me, because everybody likes to talk about themselves.
Yeah. Well, Bazi means 8 images in Chinese. And the Bazi is sometimes called a Chinese horoscope. It doesn't really do it justice. If you like, it is Feng Shui of time, or Feng Shui, however you want to say it, of time as opposed to of space.
Oh, okay. That's how it relates. Very nice. Okay.
So there are, Bazi means 8 images. Actually, it's usually referred to as four pillars because those 8 images, 8 Chinese characters, take up the shape of four pillars, one character on top of another. So this year, for instance, is a wood snake. So the pillar is a wood snake. The branch or animal is a snake. The moderator, the thing that makes it different from other snakes, is called a stem, and it's wood. So this year has a particular character different from the snake of, say, 1977 or 1965, for instance. And each of us has a unique signature, if you like, of the moment that we were born. So it is, in a sense, a horoscope, but in the same way that in Western horoscopes, it would be ludicrous to think there are only 12 sorts of people. So in this, because there are 5 elements and there are 12 animals, there are 60 possibilities, but there are a lot more because you have four of those pillars. There are thousands of variations. And the actual signature of your Bazi, along with where you were born, is pretty much unique. And what we're discussing was the uniqueness of yours, because yours is very interesting because, as I said to you, it's very unbalanced, which is not a problem. Most of the most interesting ones are unbalanced. Being a balanced buzzy is a bit quite hard to work with. It's not obvious what to do with it. And in your case, my opening remark was to say that you've been making people crack up for a long time. The Bazi suggests about age 3. I suggested it was to do with attention, and you said something much more interesting because I think you said it was to kind of calm things down or make people happy or have things be work well. Was it something like that you said?
Well,
Is that right?
I think what I said was I found the found life a little. The word I used was staid, a
Yes.
little uninteresting, or less exuberant and imaginative than I felt inside that it was. And so I think a lot of that was just let's have a little bit more fun than what we're doing right now. Uh,
Yeah, yes. You throw a custard pie into the party. But also what I was saying was that you are much more talented than your notoriety would indicate.
well,
It's like
I'll take that.
you have made decisions that are you might call moral or ethical decisions, which possibly means that you might otherwise have been, I don't know, you've been Marlon Brando, but who knows, you might have been Jimmy Kimmel. Um, but it's kind of admirable because you're a family man, and that is a very high value to you. And where you come from in the family that you were brought up with, it was also a high value, but there were problems with it, is what your Bazi suggests. And by the way, I never know when I'm going to talk, as we say in England, total bollocks. So,
Mhm.
I am improvising around the characters, and I don't know how accurate that is.
So far, you're pretty accurate, but I mean, just that all families have problems, so and
Yeah.
issues and difficulties and challenges. So I think a lot of it has to do with how an individual might react to what's going on around them, as much
Yeah.
as what's going on around them. Uh,
Yeah.
Somebody else might go, "Oh, that's nothing," and somebody else might go, "Oh, that's really painful," or "That's really scary," or and there's a sensitivity level that varies among people that they react to environment in different ways, and I always thought that perhaps I was a little bit more on the sensitive side, not in a necessarily a crybaby way or something like that, but just an awareness that there might be some other meaning going on than what was on the surface.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have two rats and you have two tigers, which is very unusual. And the rat has this thing of because it's yang water, which means lots of water, and water is communication and emotion and talking. There is this possibility with rats to blurt, to say a few words more than they meant to say. And part of your humor comes out of lampshading that tendency. So if I'm reading this rightly, you would say things that were actually unintentionally funny, and then you'd magnify them and make them very funny.
Hmm.
It's like there was a part of you that couldn't help saying the wrong thing. You couldn't help being inappropriate.
Yes, that is absolutely the truth. That's completely exact. That's exactly the whole thing. And and I've had close friends say to me, I don't know how you get away with saying the things you say. People
Yeah,
don't get that offended or offended
yeah,
at all most of the time. I mean, believe me, I've offended a lot of people. That's not but that's not usually my intent.
yeah,
Particularly as I've aged, I really don't want to offend people in a sense, unless if it's have you ever heard this, like to me, like the job of a comedian or anybody that is trying to make change, it's to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
nice. The trick is, I think, not to offend people by mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it on purpose if you're
well
going to do it.
well in a way that may be not just cruel, that may elevate it, it's in some way or inform.
You don't have cruelty in your Bazi at all. The character of cruel humor is a monkey, and you have two tigers, which are absolutely opposed to that. And that gift to make people laugh without hurting anybody is extraordinarily valuable. It's a kind of Robin Williams kind of gift, and it is um, so important to know that we don't have to hurt people to make them laugh. We don't have to hurt someone else to make them laugh. You're not the kind of guy whose stand-up consists of picking up on the guy with a leg in a cast in the front row.
I would do that though.
But no, maybe that's wrong. Okay.
I would have to
Um,
figure out a way to do it that wasn't where the guy's not, feeling terrible about himself.
where these perceptions are coming from is a Chinese thing called Dabazi, 8 images, meaning and consists of 4 pillars. As I said, I can't remember whether we were recording that or not. Everybody at the moment that they were born has a signature of 4 animals. I actually draft 5. That's what's called a life house, which is unique to them. And from those things, with a little bit of homework and perception, you can tell an awful lot about somebody. And the reason that horoscope really doesn't do the Bazi justice is because it's not about tall, dark strangers. It's really a healing tool because it will tend to identify things that people haven't seen that they can actually do something about. And the book is called I Talk to the Animals because there is this model to follow. There are rules to it. But when you really get into it, it goes somewhere you've got no right to go to at all. What I've said to you so far is consistent with the characters, but it's not the only way that it could have been read. So talking to the animals, it's like they go, it's this way, this guy's like this. And it's very hard to pin down where that comes from. I mean, I would not claim to be psychic. I mean, I don't want that on my shingle, but it's kind of that kind of area of country directed by these characters.
I was thinking about this morning about when we're born, we come in with things that are anchors,
Yeah.
our biology, our genetics, our family of origin that we didn't, we picked or didn't pick, depending how you want to look at it, and certain trauma, society constraints, and so it's no surprise that human beings really haven't changed much over time. We
Yeah.
still make the same mistakes and we still do all the same things because of those. But now we're adding this other thing that you're talking about, this time of birth. Having an influence on all the things that we do in our life. You're saying, oh, you have this sort of personality predisposition, which was accurate, and there was a birth aspect to it, a time of birth and a place. So the idea of free will is kind of very much more limited than I would like to think.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say there is free will and there is destiny, and the trick is to see the meaning in that as a paradox. And when you talk about an influence of the date of the birth, I would tend to think of it as an indicator. I mean, I've pretty much given up on causality. I have no idea what causes what. I mean, is it nature, is it nurture, or is it something else? I mean, we seem to learn a lot early, so those things are obviously things useful to know. But people live on lots of different levels, I think. There's a level of linear causality, this caused that, but there are levels that are not like that at all. And the Bazi comes out of 2,000 years of Chinese practice, and this idea of the Tao there being a way that is appropriate at any given moment. But what causes what, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and do we need to know?
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Exactly. Exactly.
I was thinking, what I was thinking about was how the attempts of human beings to create certain religions and political systems to head humanity in a direction where it's better. Well, that hasn't worked. It obviously hasn't worked. We're exactly the same as we were, with a few more gadgets to play with. And so, what is there? Well, is that something we really even want or can expect? Which doesn't seem like it is. And why we're very sort of hopeful in that direction a lot, and there's people really dig their heels in and get very dogmatic about the rightness of their approach. which causes even more problems because
Yeah, but
because it
somebody,
causes control over other people, and people really act horribly when they're trying to control other people.
well, we want to control because we want to think there are rules. I mean, science is the kind of the basis of science is that you will get the same result under the same conditions every time.
Hmm.
But we come across this thing called quantum mechanics, which is kind of a joke at the expense of scientists, because it turns out that it isn't like that at all. You know, because on a macro level here in the world, we throw a ball up in the air, it comes back down again, but there are a relatively small number of events. On the micro level, there are many, many, many more events. You throw a ball up in the air, sometimes it doesn't come back. So who knows what causes what? But what I would say in relation to what you're saying about human beings learning things, we are very slow learners. And typically people will come to me with problems. I mean, it'll be money, it'll be romance, it'll be health. It'll be, relationship is actually the center of all of this stuff. But they'll come to me and they say, I'm like this. I will look simply at their year pillar. This is a quarter of it, and I will be able to say, if on a good day, that if the force is with me, I'll be able to say your dad was like that, your mother was that, your mother was like this. What you've done is to make decisions based on that input, and you know what? So did they. So if your father slapped you around, probably his father slapped him around, and probably his father slapped him around. I mean, interestingly, I sometimes think of an example of Brian Wilson, who's one of my heroes, greatest songwriter of the 20th century, in my opinion.
Hmm.
You must know God only knows. I mean, I only have to mention it, I get close to tears. But his father was supposed to have slapped him around. His father was a very violent man. He had a lot more than just being slapped around. And if I'm right, I think Brian Wilson's great grandfather was a hitman. There's some kind of learning going on. But if you like, we can trace it right back to Adam and Eve, if you want to use that metaphor, for whatever's going on. God blamed Adam, Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the snake took the Nuremberg defense. And we, you and I, I mean, and I recognize a fellow traveler, we're here to try and change that course of events, to refer, to not find where things have gone wrong, but where they've gone right, and to continue that. And as I was saying, what I get from you, Bazi, is a man who's worthy of great admiration because you've made decisions that were probably not good financial ones, probably not good career ones, but were really good ethical ones. And that ought to be more obviously rewarded than it is.
Well, I have to say, and I don't know if I was born with that idea, but that was always the idea of being ethical was always the kind of at the top of the list of how I did almost everything, how I've done and did almost everything. And the times that I've not done that, that's probably the things I have the most shame about and the most pain about, where I did not follow, or I lowered my vibration in a way and I paid the price.
Yeah.
And so, I have to, not that I'm any sort of even close to, 100% that guy, but that's always been the most important thing to me. One of the most important things is like, well, if I'm going to do something, I always say, I used to say, well, if somebody would suggest something, I can't do that. I have mirrors in my house and I have to look in them. And so that was always a thing. Now, I don't know if that was taught to me by my family or I just came in that way, and a little bit of both, because you can make an argument for having absolutely no ethics because the world doesn't give a shit, and you can you do what you want. There's very rarely consequences for people that act that way.
We don't live in a just universe. We live in a causal universe. And as I say, I've given up causality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But your Bazi is interesting. It has your year is a wood horse, which would technically mean that your father is represented by wood and your mother is represented by horse. And the wood horse is kind of faffy. The wood horse can't really make up their mind. And this thing about ethics. I think some people their karma is instant and for some people karma is much slower. And it is, it is no good me trying to puzzle why it is that good things happen to bad people sometimes and bad things happen to good people. I just have to paddle my own canoe. But with your particular Bazi, there is a stern watch upon you, and you were beating about, thrashing about for what time it might have happened. The Bazi technically would say it was about your age 3,
Hmm.
at the point where you discovered you were funny, and also at the point where you became a writer at age 3, one way or another. And that, I doubt that that was actually hitting a computer keyboard or even picking up a pen, but it was an awareness that you wanted to keep a record, and you could see something creative in the events, something that you could be very creative with the events that were going on around you. That's what a wood horse with that kind of big fate is like. But the big fate, as I go into in the book, I talk to the animals. The big fate, which is a part of the Bazi, it, is the moment when a child kind of arrives. It's when they get that they aren't part of their mum, if you like. They get their, they have agency, something like that. But it will come with a decision, and that decision will be based on a big psychological event. Not necessarily traumatic, very often so, but not necessarily. My own, for instance, comes in at 16 months, and I have twin sisters who are 16 months younger than me, almost exactly. The calculation is embarrassingly accurate. Because accuracy in this thing is very often snake oil, but there you go. But I have twin sisters who are born 16 months younger than me, which probably accounts for all sorts of attention-seeking behavior. And for you, yours comes in at 3, and you were presented with a decision of who you were and where you're going to go next. For many people, it is a limiting decision. For many people, the first piece of awareness at that point on this model is something like, "I'm not all right." I mean, and lots of words have been written about that. That is not a new perception. What the Bazi does perhaps is to give us a point at which we can say, you decided that because you had seen this, or because of this happened, because of this happening. And the big fate renews every 10 years in a different elemental form. So yours comes in at 3, and it's a fire rabbit. And the rabbit is about writing, which is why I said it would go from simple display to thinking about narrative. Every 10 years it renews, and there's a new kind of ambient energy and a new decision, if you like. And the second decision very often is, I know I'm not all right, but I didn't realize the world was screwed as well.
Yeah.
And the one after that is very often, I know I'm not all right, the world is screwed, and there's damn all I can do about it. And that is not inevitable. It is not universal, but it is very, very common, which is why lots of people, by the time they get to yours and my age, we are about of an age, they're given up. They've withdrawn. They think they've learned everything, but what they mean is they've buried everything.
Hmm.
And you have the gift to bring people out of that. You are a man who makes people laugh very, very easily. I mean, if I may say so, you have a funny face.
Well, maybe I do. I don't know.
I won't be the first person who's told you that.
Um, well, I mean, I suppose that comes from the inside more than the outside.
Yeah.
Uh, because if you just took a photograph of me, you wouldn't say, with just no expression, you you wouldn't probably go, oh, that's a comic face. I don't know if you would. Maybe you would do that. I don't.
I think
I,
I think you probably would.
oh, okay.
And I think the photos I've seen on your website do not really do you justice. I think you could get a more sensitive photographer to get the character of your face, because your sensitivity does not come out in the photographs I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell the guy that took the picture. He's a friend of mine who's supposedly a professional photographer.
Well, they take what they see, don't they?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about faces too. That we have this nonverbal communication with each other, and you see a face and you pick something, you pick things up, and it might be not be accurate, it might be accurate, but you definitely get some kind of a feeling and an impression and an intuition about somebody just by looking at them. Um,
Yeah. So is that an act of observation or an act of creation?
Yeah, who knows?
An
It's
act of projection. Nobody, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So the Bazi fight so offers you a kind of a path through that, offers you an insight into when things might happen and how people might impinge upon you. And I guess it offers you a viewpoint.
I've always loved looking at people's faces, and actually, when you look at people's faces, one side is different than the other side, which is a really interesting thing to me. How why that is. I mean, it's not just that they're not symmetrical. Some people are
Yeah.
way not symmetrical, but most people, they look the same on both sides, but they don't. Particularly in the
Yeah.
eyes.
Have you looked more deeply at what else that's telling you?
Not as much as you have.
Well, I'm a diviner, which means
Uh-huh.
what I'm doing is, at my best, I'm aware of what the universe is telling me. I'm paying attention, whether it's a noise in the background, whether it's a snatch of song, whether it's literally a word that someone says or a word that catches my eye or whatever. The diviner can divine from anything from, historically, diviners work from, slaughtered cattle or from the stars, clouds, from fires, from crystal balls, and so on. But talking about the face in Chinese metaphysics, and Bazi is one aspect, there's what's called Mian Shang, which is spelled Mian, one word, Xiang. If you wanted to Google it and look it up, I mean, anyone who's listening might find this interesting, which is to do with the feng shui of faces. And there are rules about what different parts of the face, the way that they are mean. And the very question you're asking is central and one that I have kind of picked up and done my own thing with, because technically, the left side of the face should be reflect your father. Technically, the right side of your face should reflect your mother, which is one way of interpreting what you're saying. I find it the other way around, but they're certainly different. And I find that I can look in the mirror and I can see my father looking at me. And I can look in the mirror and I can see my mother looking at me. I mean, at this time in my life, I get a bit fed up with seeing my parents in the mirror. I'd sooner be younger, but there you go. But what you're saying, I mean, perhaps that is some insight into the question that you were asking.
I never thought about it as the particular parent, but I more looked at it like things like emotion, like, oh, that, the one side of your face, this is very broad interpretation, but the right side of your face looks happy and the left side doesn't look sad. One
Yeah.
side looks angry, one side looks confused. I always sort of looked at it like from an emotional standpoint, like it's reflecting an inner life that maybe more conflicted or not conflicted. Maybe sometimes they match pretty well, and there's like a harmony between the two sides.
Yes. Yeah. But everybody is communicating all the time, even if they're not talking, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, when you hear about, there's a lot of expressions in language that person has a twinkle in their eye is the one I think about. And you've met people where you just go, oh, there's something going on. Like they're mischievous, or they're peaceful, or they're angry. You pick that up a lot too.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Or where someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes.
yeah, yep. It's a forced smile too. It's like
Yeah. They're
a
not amused.
painful smile.
Yeah. Or I mean, in nature, smiles are often a bit dangerous. I mean, I think I'm no expert on higher primates, but I think when a chimpanzee smiles at you, you probably watch out.
Yeah, it's like diabolical, huh?
Yeah, and interesting, that takes us back to what we were talking about, because the Chinese archetypes, of which the monkey is one, you can take an awful long way. And the monkey is the sign of a stand-up, but a particular sort of stand-up. The monkey stand-up is the one who picks on people in the front row, whereas the stand-up who just makes people laugh without making anybody uncomfortable, or particularly without attacking anybody, which is something that I know that you're able to do, that it's so clear from this, is a real gift. The one who can give you a smart ass one liner that bites much less valuable than one who just makes you giggle.
Those are all things you experiment with when you're starting out, and you try these different things just to see what fits, and
Mm.
how you, and some people are great at that. The one, the more jabbing kind of thing that you're talking about, but you still like them because of the way they do it.
Yeah.
And then other people it's just not for them. That's just the wrong fit, and so they don't, hopefully they steer away from it. I know what I was going to ask you. How does a guy who's living in London, England, get into Chinese thought?
That is a great question. I've been weird a long time. I mean,
Yay. My
my
favorite
my
people.
my mum told me that I used to tell her who was coming to the door when I was a little boy, and I don't remember that at all. And I think I probably saw some weird stuff and got kind of talked out of it. But I'm kind of glad that I don't see anything nasty or weird, or I do not see dead people. But I think I was talked out of it, and I don't think I could do what I do if I did. But to answer your question very simply, I've been on quite a eccentric path a very long time. So I've worked with a lot of strange people. I've worked with oh a Navajo shaman who was doing earth acupuncture on holy sites in England at Avebury Ring and Salisbury and Glastonbury Tor. I've worked with many, if you like, facilitators, gurus, or whatever. I did cult for a couple of years in the 80s. But cut a long story short, I was working with an American psychologist healer called Chuck Spezzano. I don't know whether you come across him, but he's a regular guy, Philadelphia Italian, based out of Hawaii, who has a model called the psychology of vision, which is basically, everything's good and there are some mistakes. I mean, he's a lovely, lovely guy. But I was working with him on his team, and we were doing a workshop based on biblical archetypes. And this was at the time of Desert Storm. And the idea was, if we could work with the biblical archetypes, we might prevent World War III. So you have me to thank for the fact that World War III did not happen in 1993 or whatever it was. But in the process of doing this, what I noticed was there were all sorts of echoes of the 1930s in the 1990s. So, like Bismarck said, some damn fool thing in the Balkans, you know, that was recurring, that had been happening in the 30s, happening in the 90s, the rise of dictators, a whole load of things. And somebody took me to one side and said, this is not that amazing. The Chinese calendar tells you that things happen in cycles of 60. And it blew my mind. It was no, I could see a pattern. Um, I could see a pattern in there, and I followed it up because Bazi was what interested me. Um, I studied for a little while with now Grandmaster Chan Kunwa, who was just, as it happened, who was just coming out of declaring himself a master. And I studied with him pretty much full time for 3 years. Um, and I studied then also with a guy called Derek Walters, who's probably the only, the only Western authority that the Chinese guys would give the time of day to. I mean, if my students go across to China and the Chinese guys say, "Well, who are you studying with?" And they say Richard Ashworth. They say, "Who the hell is that?" And they say, "Yeah, but he studied with Derek Walters." Like, Derek Walters. So I studied with those guys, and Bazi felt to me like a remembering, a returning. It's like, I already knew stuff about it. You know how it is where you just look and you go, "This
Sure.
is my game," you know.
Yeah.
So I did the best part of a term at Huazhong University in Wuhan. That's 2005, so I'm not contagious. And I have studied with every Chinese master who will give me the time of day, and the material of many more. And what I concluded was it like Bazi seemed to be what I was supposed to be doing. And I've drafted thousands of them. I've worked with an awful lot of people, a handful of whom are quite notorious, but only a handful. And I have found it to be something that can restore people to factory settings, something that brings people back home. We go, it looks to me like at age 3, something like that happened. And someone will say, I can see that. In fact, this week, I was working with a lady who was having issues in her relationship, which she had very good-heartedly come to tell me about because I worked with her before. Um, and what it was about was the death of her little sister when she was 3 or 4, her 2-year-old sister when she was 3 or 4. I find it hard to talk about this without melting. Um, and it was such a huge event. It made her have all sorts of ideas about the way that family worked, and it clearly had, as it would, have a huge impact on her parents. I
Yeah.
mean, parents who continue to love each other despite the birth of a child, they have to have such courage. It is such a difficult thing to work with. But anyway, my point was we looked at her big fate, which came in at that point. This was what appeared to have happened. And we could see meaning in it, which she had never done before. And it's important not to trivialize this stuff, but part of the meaning of her sister dying was that it kind of brought her parents together, that it took them through a kind of purgatory. I mean, and I'm not claiming to either know why that is
Yeah.
or to suggest that it's a great idea, but it's clearly what happened. But the Bazi was the indicator of when things happened and what the kind of shape was, because I knew none of that before I started talking to her.
Those really early, super early childhood events are so powerful. I mean, they
Yeah,
literally, because you don't have a lot to compare it to. The younger you are, when something happens, you don't really have a lot to compare to. So it's the impact of those things is enormous. It literally it changes the trajectory of how you operate in the world,
yeah.
and pretty
Um,
permanently.
they say children are resilient. I'd say children don't complain. That's a bit different.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Well, they don't complain, and they also don't have the certain capacities to process things.
Well,
But that stuff goes in, man, and it lives inside people. Particularly at those young ages. I mean, I was going to just mention, because you said when I was around 3. Now that was when my younger sister was born. Was when I was 3. And
yeah,
I remember being very excited about it, like really, like this is so, like this is cool, like I can't wait. Um, and so my parents came home with my sister from, brought her home, and I kept asking them, can I hold her? And they kept putting it off. And finally, I just was like so persistent. They said, okay. So they sat me on the couch and put her in my arms, and both of them sat on either side of me. And I was holding her, and I was really like, how you go inside somebody with your eyes and you look at them and you can feel them.
yeah,
And I was just starting to do that. And they said something like, okay, that's enough. And they took her away. And I was really upset about it. Really upset about it. And I said, no, don't. But they did it. So I asked my mother years later. I don't even think she even realized what she was doing. Oh, she did realize it. I said, why did you do that? Why'd you take her away? And here the answer was, we were afraid you would hurt her. And I was like, why would you think that? I just, it didn't even, like, and literally this act of fear went inside me. And I had this feeling like the family isn't what I thought it was, kind of thing, or I wasn't able to connect with this sister of mine. And I'm sure I acted out after that because they said I did. Like I, was complaining a lot, and the milk's too white. This food doesn't taste good. She said I was doing stuff like that, and so it was. It's that thing where you're the center of attention, and if you don't integrate the new child into a family in a way that includes the person, the kid that's already there, there's going to be a resentment. And
yeah.
yeah, I thought it was an interesting story. It made a lot of sense to me that I had this odd feeling after that. I just didn't get it.
It certainly is that. But you see, what's interesting is you um, are talking of that experience as if it were a common experience. I don't think you get exactly how talented you were and are in that regard. Because yes, I do understand that when you can just look at someone and be with them and love them and know them, you know, at my best, I do that. I would not claim to be able to do it all the time. But you, like me, teach it to your children, I'm sure. But your parents couldn't see it.
No.
They don't. What you described as a commonplace experience is not a commonplace experience. It is an expression of a facility with love and empathy, which is of huge value and relatively uncommon. Did you not
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I didn't even look at it like that because to me, because it's my experience, I think other people must have it too. In
They all
probably.
can do it. They all can do it, but we get cluttered with worries and the internet and Instagram and Christ knows what. I mean, we get busy and we get cluttered. Everybody can do it. And again, using the Bazi, one of the things that is a line to go down is to feel into how the other person feels and kind of take charge of where we go there and to be able to feel when you're with someone who is in panic. I mean, you can see it, there are clues, obviously, but to actually have those feelings and to be able to just love people, this is of extraordinary power. And as I say, I mean, this might sound like I'm bloody flirting with you, but I mean, you have an extraordinary ability to love. And I don't think you quite got it. I bet your wife knows. I bet your kids do, and I bet your kids have got it. And for me, the big job with my kids was, as one of my teachers, actually, Chuck Spezzano's wife, Lency Spezzano, whose method of healing is mostly about eye contact. She would say that you have a rich father, meaning you are in contact with God. But she would notice the child's eyes when they were still in contact with heaven. And I have pictures of my kids where I can see they were still in contact with heaven. And to some extent, my intention has always been they should stay that way.
Mhm.
And I imagine I'm using different words, but I bet you know what I mean.
I do. Absolutely. The thing we come from, we lose contact with it by, socialization and aging a little, and
We get
the
busy and we need to earn a
duties of
dollar.
life. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I think, and that's sort of in the ideal sense. That's what the spiritual path is to reconnect with that as
yeah.
deeply as you can.
For me, if my work is not healing heartbreak and making dreams come true, I'm wasting my time.
Mm,
I need to charge for it because I need to feed my children and grandchildren.
sure.
I've got 6 children and 9 grandchildren. There's a lot of financial duty there, but I don't want to earn money unless I'm doing that. And that's not to say I've never compromised, because like you, there are things I've not done well. But what I aim to do is to always to be mending heartbreak and making dreams come true, because there's no point otherwise. I'm not doing this to be clever.
Right. I don't get that. I get that what you're doing is for those reasons, just by talking to you. I was thinking about, when we were talking about like looking into somebody's eyes and going into, who they are, which is really empathy, I think is
Yeah,
what it is. And there has oddly been people talking about how, at least here in the United States, there's a couple of people that have talked about empathy being the almost the enemy of civilization.
oh God, I know, I
And
know.
I'm like, what? It like sickens me. I mean, it makes me sick. When I hear that, I'm like, how off the mark are you as a human being? I mean, what the heck happened to your heart and your mind and your soul that you would think that's like the antithesis of what we're when it's actually the most important thing.
I agree. I mean, I think, I mean, I
Freaky.
don't know, we don't want to go into politics here, but JD Vance has been talking about that kind of stuff. But I always remember what Gandhi said. You have to hear exactly what he was saying and hear it in the right spirit. But he said, I admire your Christ. I don't understand your Christians.
Yeah, well, that's yeah.
And we're talking there about religion as opposed to spirituality,
Yeah.
and what possible value there could be in a system that says that it is wrong or dangerous or something to be unselfish and to care about people. I mean, surely that's what Jesus was all about. The Jesus that I knew as a child definitely was all about empathy, wasn't he?
It seems like the highest of callings to me,
Yeah,
that not
yeah.
not something to be dismissed, even, attacked. I guess, what it is you can't do, if you have it, you can't do the shitty things that those people are able to do. um
Self-justification, of course it
yeah.
is. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's this idea of tough love. And I know
Yeah.
that there are good-hearted people who have, coined that phrase and have practiced it. But frankly, I don't think it's such a thing. Just be nice to people. It's simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, clear boundaries make sense. Uh, I mean, especially, when you have a kid, they don't really have, you're not born with sort of a sense of boundaries. And I find, as a parent, that kids are asking for guidance, and
Yeah.
they're asking for, if you look at a kid that isn't given boundaries, they're all over the place. They're hurting because they don't have the wherewithal to figure things out on their own. They need guidance from somebody who's older and has their best
But
interests at heart.
discipline and violence are very different
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
I remember my wife Sheila and myself. I mean, Sheila does everything in this work that requires critical thinking and problem solving intelligence, and lets me get on with this. I remember we were at a pub quiz, like a quiz we have in pubs sometimes over here, with a very nice young South African couple who were contemplating having a baby, and the guy was saying, "Yeah, but I have to instill discipline," which is so so I've got to be ready to smack him when I need to. And I remember it was one of those moments where you can make a big difference. And I said, no, you're going to love him so much, but there'll be no need for that. Violence, any form of violence is a mistake. Any form of violence is a mistake. Sometimes necessary long conversation, but any violence is a mistake. And the Book of Changes, which is a big part of Feng Shui and of Bazi, says the only inevitable outcome of violence is further violence. So boundaries created by love, created by communication, created by common purpose are very powerful. Boundaries created by slapping people around, they're just going to create resentment. Christ knows what.
Yeah, it doesn't change the internal being of a person to stop them, or
Yeah.
hurt them to get them to comply. It doesn't change the insides. Oh, it changes them for the worse if it does anything. But
Yeah.
you don't change the person's mind necessarily. They still think the way they think. They're just pissed off now.
Well, they just go secretive.
It's the other part of it. Yeah, you got to keep a secret. You got to keep it as a secret what you really think, because if you tell the truth, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tricky thing, particularly with parenting, because there's so many things going on. There's so much frustration with kids. I used to say, like, I can't wait for my kids to wake up, and I can't wait for them to go to sleep.
I know what you mean. I try to be as good as I can be, and I fail a lot.
Yeah, and I think that the awareness of that is really where the growth comes with people. It's just like when you start to when you become unaware or uncaring about how you may have reacted, that's when people really come off the rails. I mean, but if you can maintain some kind of an awareness of, have the ideal, the thing you want to progress to, but not, beat yourself up too bad about perfection, because it's gonna happen. You're gonna be imperfect. And the other thing is, one can't exist without the other. So you can't have perfection without imperfection, because by definition you have to have the other thing. for the other thing to exist. So it's,
Brings us very neatly back to yin and yang.
yeah, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because yin and yang is all about contrast. The Chinese idea, the Chinese, if you like, origin myth is that you have nothing, the mochi, and then you have yin and yang. There's no place in between nothing and two things because you cannot have one thing. If you went from a great nothingness to another great nothingness, you've still got nothing. Whereas you have to have two things to have contrast. So you've got to have a substance to have a hole in it. You've got to have light to have dark, and so on and so forth. So
Hmm.
absolutely. So those ideas underpin the ideas of the Bazi. I mean, the Bazi is in drafting a Bazi, I will be conforming with rules about the five elements, the Wuxing, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, and I will be conforming to the ideas of yin and yang that you form the patterns of the characters I draw.
I was just thinking that the one of the aims of I think even religion and politics is to make things one way and not and that's where they kind of fail, not to recognize that there's opposites going on all the time, and that desire for sameness among the the followers of whatever, that's where the conflict comes in. I mean, the gray area is like the enemy of certain types of thinking, but it exists. So you can't have something that actually exists be something you want to get rid of, because you can't do that because it exists. And so that inability to embrace the fact that things aren't always one way. Everything sort of has two sides to it, and two pieces to it, where there's resistance, which is, to me, a life force. It's healthy. It's like a healthy life force that goes on when you have, you can't get strong without lifting weights, which are heavy, which is, you don't want to do that. They're heavy. But then you actually weaken if you don't do it. So it's a real simple sort of natural law. But for some reason, there's group thinking that things have to be a certain way without any sort of resistance to it.
We want to know, don't we? People want to know and they want to control because it's kind of, if we know how things work, it's kind of safer and more comfortable.
Right.
But the bottom line is we really don't.
No, we don't.
Ultimately, we are spinning alone in darkness on an imaginary ball of mud. And once we kind of get that, we can be a little bit less attached to the form that it takes. But it's I mean, a group that is united by belief is a political party. And I would apply that to religions as well. It's a political party
Mm-hmm.
because my relationship with God, or whatever word you want to use, higher mind or whatever, is my individual relationship. It is not a group thing.
Yes.
The group thing is a social activity and beneficial, but it's not my relationship with whatever word you want to use. Higher mind, spirit, I'm pretty easy with whatever terms.
To me, it's really, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, it's really about kindness. If the more you can do that, I think the more benefit there is for everybody. And
Was
it's
it Jack Groucho Marx who said, sincerity, once you can fake that, you've got it made.
yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes, particularly when I was younger, when I would meet people that were genuinely earnest, I would sort of like, was this, I would, is this real? And, when you sort of discovered that it was, there are certain people that you encounter in life and they're so earnest and they're just so not encumbered with hardly any artifice at all. It almost makes you feel kind of like, what's wrong with me? You feel a little dirty. I'm like, how did you get like that? It's just, and do people take advantage of you? Because I never wanted to take advantage of people like that. I was just so blown away by that quality. And, maybe just some of that's a function of living in a simpler kind of community or a simpler life. But I think some people do come in like that. They just get born that way. And you're just like, whoa, and then maybe it's nurtured in their family in some way, but
Well,
it's really
Chuck
an
Spezzano,
extraordinary kind of person to meet.
Chuck Spezzano, who I referred to earlier, would say that to be 100% open is completely safe. To be
Mm-hmm.
99% open is fucking lethal. Excuse my language. You have to edit that out. To be
No,
he would
it's
use that
staying
word.
in, Richard. It's staying
Oh,
in.
okay.
No,
But
we don't.
99% is lethal.
Mm-hmm.
That's not his language. That bad language. That's my bad language. I take responsibility for that.
Well,
But
it's I don't.
99% open is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Fully open is safe. That's the idea.
Yeah. And also, just with language, I mean, there are times where that type of strong emphasis really helps. It actually gets the point across in a better way.
So, time to remind them that my reason for being here, even though I've got completely lost in between, is to promote my book. I talk to the
Yes,
animals.
yes. Let's say everything about that book, then, so people can find it.
It is a definitive guide to the four pillars of destiny, or Bazi. It is, if you attend to it carefully, it will give you everything you need to both draft a Bazi, if you like a Chinese horoscope, and also interpret it. That is, of course, the beginning, because it is actually a life study. You can get it from Amazon. I mean, you just Google "I talk to the animals," you'll find it there. And right now, if you Googled that, you'd actually find a page where there is a 20 or 30 page extract, which would allow you to either go, yeah, this is great, or this is total garbage. But you actually have an opportunity to do that without paying for it. And it would be wonderful if you pre-order it. My publishers tell me that, there are all sorts of good things that happen if you pre-order. If the numbers look good, they print more, and they think you're more important. And using Bazi, the 3rd of October would be the day to pre-order if you felt like pre-ordering it. But as I say, it will give you, at the very least, it will give you an insight into Chinese philosophy, and at the most, it might give you a tool, which it did for me, which completely changed my life. It is the most powerful healing tool that I have come across in a lot of searching. Some are very clumsy searching, but a lot of searching. It is applied appropriately, it's a remarkable instrument.
Well, what an amazing talk. I mean, I totally lost track of time, which I'm happy about. I'm always happy when that happens. So thank you so much for your wonderful talk today. What a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I hope when I'm on the West Coast we might have a drink, and it'll all be off the record.
Oh, I would love that. If you get here, you find me, and I'll meet you somewhere.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Richard Ashworth for being on the show. Please check out his new book. It is called I Talk to the Animals, and have a fantastic day. Thank you.